welcome to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. We are exploring what it means to be a philosopher, and we are reading Plato's Parmenides, a text written by the great ancient Greek philosopher Plato about his student Socrates, you may have heard of him, and his first encounter with his teacher Parmenides. What a story. We've talked about why we're interested in reading this text and how it relates to being a philosopher. We've talked about what philosophy is, why we should care about philosophy, what sorts of benefits philosophy can offer us, why it's the most important thing we can do, why it's a fun thing we can do, why it's called the noblest game, and why it's sometimes called the greatest, why I call it the greatest game in town. Some people say the only real game. But yeah, I think these are fun descriptions, and you might want to think about why they might say something like that. So, to recap, what is it to be a philosopher? To be on a quest to know the self, a quest to use the mind to know the mind, to awaken up our own senses that lay dormant, specifically the senses that allow us to see higher levels of reality, higher levels of our own mind. It's your mind. You can look at it. You can find out how far it goes. You can explore the reaches of it. It's not something different from you. It's not something you should be afraid of. It's not something we should only whisper about in the, quiet shadows of philosophical libraries and hallways or mystic initiation halls. I mean, sometimes there is a history of that, of groups that have initiation into philosophy, certain rituals and sacraments that they take, that they participate in. There are stories about philosophers like Pythagoras and his ilk, his sorts of groups of people who were initiated into groups where they would be introduced to philosophy, told about the logos, informed about why it was significant, the mind, how far it can reach. And of course, we have lots of, we have gained benefits from their insights, like the insights from Pythagoras in mathematics, of course, the insights from people like Plato into philosophy, the nature of reality and the mind and the soul. But it has reached a time in history where it has been said, the game of philosophy should no longer be kept secret. It's not the word esoteric, which is a fancy word that means just for our little special group. That can't happen anymore. Why? Well, to be frank, there might not be enough time. Humanity is at a point in history where we have the technology to create a wonderful world in which all of our common needs are met efficiently, productively, renewably, using the technology we have available now. Rationally. We can have a rational system of living in harmony with each other and with the resources of the world because of the level of technology that we're at currently. Freeing us up to do things that benefit our soul. We no longer have to sacrifice our time, our life for survival. And so we can be free to, what's the Hicks quote? Explore inner and outer space collectively together. As philosophers, we recognize that the real game is exploring inner space. Now, as we get into the Parmenides, we can discover that the word inner probably doesn't apply because it's not in us if mind is all. And as we're reading in the Parmenides, Parmenides is making the claim that all is one. Does that mean all is one mind? Everything is a single mind? What does he mean by one? What does he mean by all? Is he saying all is one self? Because he seems to be using self a lot to talk about things in themselves. The self of justice, the self of beauty, different from the particular examples of beautiful things. So if all is mind, or we have mind and our mind participates in our body, or we participate in the idea of mind, then mind might not be in us, it might be all. So using the word inner space might not apply. That's something we can think about. That's something we can take with us as we continue our philosophical journey. So, exploring inner and outer space together, but we also have the level of technology in our society where we might quickly bring about the end of the human species. There is a lot of unnecessary suffering, unnecessary pain, distracting us from our philosophical quest, the reason why we're here. And so philosophy can't be kept secret. It's to be shared. It's to be shared with everybody, with our teachers, with our friends, with our family. Anybody who has a mind open and interested in knowing the mind. Why? What benefits does it bring us? Well, we talked about how discovering the logos, discovering the pattern that is understandable, that underlies everything, that guides everything, that is not dumb, but has intelligence. It's not ineffective, but has some capability. It's not bad, but has some goodness. This logos we're here to discover, and it's our method, it's our path that we can follow to understand the nature of ourselves and our highest goals. That's the logos path to something that we call destiny, path. And equally it has its shadow. The sick logos or the pathologos that can lead us to our fate. That's what we want to escape. For ourselves as individuals, that's the game. Of course, collectively, the more philosophers wake up to our philosophical game, our quest, our journey, our purpose, the benefits will overflow into society itself. Society can discover its logos. What's the purpose for humanity? What's the intelligent, understandable path humanity can follow collectively? Equally so, how can we apply the logos to recognize our limits? Where are we blocked? And what are the causes of those limits? And how can we address them? We are reading a book where we have an example of that. That's what we are seeing with young Socrates and Parmenides. Parmenides is using the logos, what his student Zeno is calling the self-logos, which is an interesting question. Why is he saying that about it? He's using the logos to bring Socrates along, but also he's recognized his limit, his block, a limitation he's facing, and he's using the logos to address it. By chastising him? By putting him down? By making him feel bad? No. By talking with him, using the logos, using his words, his ideas, his reasoning, in friendly, supportive, encouraging conversation, step by step. How? Through asking questions, getting an answer, responding. Step by step, they're moving together. To do what? To address the cause of Socrates' block. Block from what? Block from using his mind to know the mind at the higher levels. Now, in philosophy, we have a word called knowing. We talked about how the Greek word is nous, and how it's important to have both, because nous is a kind of knowing that applies specifically to the realm of ideas or ideas. Now, one of the key distinctions we need to make is the ideas for the Greek means that which can be beholded, grasped, completely held with your mind. That experience of turning the mind about to know the mind at the higher levels to grasp ultimate realities, that's the word idea for the Greeks. We need to introduce the word idea into our culture and distinguish it from its opposite, or maybe not its opposite, its lower reflection, concepts, what we would call ideas. This issue, distinguishing concepts or thoughts from ideas themselves, is what we are going through with Socrates. Socrates has our problem, or a problem most of us have, or a lot of people in our culture have. We are going along with him. Parmenides is addressing Socrates. He's also helping us. Isn't that fantastic? Over 2,000 years later, we're having the same dialogue from a wise man, Parmenides. And amazingly, the person that Parmenides had it became Socrates, someone who's, well, considered to be perhaps the wisest person to walk the planet. We are Socrates. We're in the same place he's in. What does that mean? That means that we have the potential ourselves to awaken philosophy, awaken the mind, awaken our ability to have knowledge, nous, of the ultimate realities, and use them to address our problems, the cause of them, remove them, and follow the logos to reach our destiny. To know the sorts of things that we're interested in knowing as human beings. Things like, what is beauty? What is justice? What is the good? And also other things that might seem a bit, I don't know, more vague, but we're still interested in them, like what is likeness itself? I mean, it's easier to see that beautiful things and to be interested as humans in what beauty is. We're all attracted to beauty. That's kind of its nature. So we might ask the question, hang on a second, I've seen a beautiful thing over there, or a beautiful person over there, and a beautiful person over there, or a thing over there. What is beauty? It can't be in that thing because it's also in that thing. It can't be in a person because I've also seen it in a work of art. What is this beautiful thing? Because I'm definitely attracted to it. When I come across something beautiful, it sparks my interest straight away. Grabs me. What is beautiful? By the way, I've also noticed that there are levels of beautiful. What's the highest level? How far does beauty go? What's the highest? You might recognize that question. What is the highest? How far does it go? This is the sort of question a philosopher asks. Human will ask if awakened to their philosophical nature. We asked the same thing about mind a few seconds ago, didn't we? What is the mind and how far does it go? What are the highest experiences of mind? How can I have them? What is knowable? How much can I know? Can I know everything? What would that be like? Same thing with beauty. What's the highest expression of beautiful? What is beauty itself? What is the one beautiful thing? Not the many examples, but what is the one beautiful thing itself? And can I know it? What would that be like? This is the essence of the philosophical question, going from the many to the one, many to one. And if you're reading along with us in the Parmenides, you might recognize that pair, that self pair, one and many. That's how it started. This is how the text started. Socrates said, hey, Zeno, I read your books, your essays. I can see what you're doing. You're making fun of people who say reality, all is many. because your teacher Parmenides has written these poems explaining that reality is one. And he said they're great poems with great arguments, sound arguments, explaining that reality is one. Or we're not quite sure if he means reality or something beyond reality, because he's using the word is. Not sure which it could mean. It either means ultimate all, or it could mean something even beyond. We're not quite sure yet, but at least on the surface it means all is one. How could it be so? Because it seems like, through our senses, that it's many. And Socrates said, "Oh, Zeno, young student of Parmenides, you're just making fun of the people who go against Parmenides and say that all is many." Or they make fun of Parmenides by showing the hilarious and absurd things that happen if all is one. And because you're making fun of the more ridiculous things that happen if all is many. So they're really struggling with all and one and many. A pair of sulfur terms. So we're also having this conversation ourselves. If we're interested in philosophy, we ourselves might be interested in one. Hey, people have many opinions, many beliefs, and a lot of them are baloney. And because they're so different and conflicting, sometimes people fight each other unnecessarily or start wars. Or in my classroom or in my family or at my workplace, people are in conflict because they have these many different conflicting ideas. And a lot of the time we just accept, hey, there is no one truth of something. It's just all relative to your own opinions, to your own perspective. Hey, if everything's relative to everyone's different perspective, then what's true for you is true for you, and what's true for me is what's true for me. It's all a lot of many different ideas and concepts and opinions, and who's to say what's right and wrong? Philosophy comes in and says, well, who's to say? That's an interesting question. How about this? What is to say? Different kind of question, right? What is to say what's true? Because we do accept that there are things that are true. We talked about when you have your car that breaks down, you go to someone who has a true understanding about mechanics. You don't go to some 4-year-old who has the opinion, oh, I'm a mechanic because look at my fancy overalls. No. That might be your opinion, but that's different from truth. If you hire an architect to build a house, you want to make sure they have the true understanding of how mathematics works. Otherwise, what would happen to the house? If they have their own invented mathematical system for how to put the wood together, it might collapse and kill you. So, we want to ask the question, does this also extend to the mind? Does it extend to beauty? That there is a one? And is it knowable? And how do I know it? I just don't want to hear that it's okay, I understand that there might be such a thing as one truth, or there might be such a thing as knowledge and understanding. Applied to these higher ideas, we have the Greek words understanding, dianoia, knowing, nous. I mean, that might make logical sense. And I am encouraged that the smartest, wisest people to walk the planet like Parmenides and Socrates, and the greatest authors like Plato seem to be on board with this idea. So that's encouraging, but still I would like to know it myself. I would like to have the logos. I would like to level up as a human being. I would like to have the skills to live my life better, to reach my goals better, to have something called the logos that can be applied to addressing my problems, overcoming my difficulties. I want it. That's right. That's the philosophical quest. It's a personal quest. It's universal in that it applies to all of us, Hey, we all have a mind. We all have reasoning. We all have a communication to us through the logos. We can all awaken this quest. But it's specific to you. It's an invitation to you. It's a call to adventure. The opening of the hero's journey for you. I hope you accept that call. I hope you find that curious at least. I hope you find something to have triggered your curiosity, your wonder, to get puzzled about. And you'll become a fellow adventurer. Now, being a philosopher, asking the question, what is philosophy? We've looked at what it is, what it can do for us. We've also, again, using what we've seen of the logo so far, that you have the positive and its negative reflection. What it is, a path to truth. What it's not, merely relativism, opinions, just concepts. The ideas, what they are, to behold with the mind, and the word that we saw last time was ousia. That's the ability of the mind to turn about and have that knowing experience. We talked about how we are becoming like ousia ourselves because we are reflecting on ourselves, reflecting on our lives, reflecting on the text, applying it to ourselves. We're doing self-reflection through reason and understanding and reflection, intelligent self-reflection, meaningful self-reflection. That is like ousia. That is a kind of ousia. So we talked about what is the positive of ideas, to behold using ousia. What is its negative shadow, concepts. So we're seeing what philosophy is and what it isn't. And amazingly, that's where we are in the text. Okay, so to recap the text, we've got Socrates, young 19-year-old, I think, Socrates, tracking down Zeno, student of Parmenides, and saying, hey, I want to ask you some questions about your writings, your logos, your first hypothesis in your logos. And then Zeno's teacher, Parmenides, steps in and says, well, let me take over the conversation, son. Asks some specific questions, and he says, you know what, Socrates? Answer this question. Do you think that there is an idea, a beholding of beauty and justice? Do you think you can do the same thing for hair, mud and dirt, hair, clay and dust? It's like, oh, I don't know. Socrates says, you know what, when I think about that, I lose the conversation. I lose the argument. I don't want to, I'm utterly at a loss, and I'm afraid of falling into an abyss of nonsense and utterly perishing. What's he hitting? His limit, his block. What does Parmenides say? These are the reasons. These are the reasons you're having this problem. You're young. You're new to philosophy. Philosophy hasn't accepted you into its embrace. If so, you wouldn't dishonor those sorts of selves. Selves meaning the highest examples. The honorific selves. And he said, by the way, underlying all that is the cause that you give heed to the opinions of human beings. That was a big one. I think a lot of us can relate to that. Caring about the opinions of human beings. Recognize that as we grow, often we give less heed to the opinions of human beings, specific ones, but imagine applying it to all opinions of all human beings. I'm not interested in any opinions from any human beings. I'm interested in something greater than opinions. And I'm interested in something that comes from something greater than human beings. I'm interested in the logos. Greater than opinions, greater than from human beings. So now, Socrates' problem was identified. Parmenides is going through a reasoned reflection along with him, saying, if something participates in beauty or participates in likeness, one apple is like another apple. How does it participate in the idea of likeness? Does it have a part of it or a whole of it? And they reasoned that it can't be either, really. So Socrates said, well, okay, maybe there is no actual idea. It's just a concept in your soul, and that's all. Individual soul. And then Parmenides says, well, actually, if you can look at specific examples of things like likeness or greatness, you can have the idea of greatness itself. But doesn't that concept have to be of something? Is it of non-being or being? Socrates said, well, it has to be of being. So he has opened his mind to the possibility that there is such a thing as a being of greatness. And that's where we are right now. We finished yesterday's reading by talking about how, by the way, if these things are intellectible, if you can think about them, if you can use your intellect to grasp them, then these beings, the being of greatness as a one, as a self, beauty as a one as itself, if you can use your intellect, then they must be made of intellect, which means that must have a nature of intellect. And he said, do you think that by being intellections that they are themselves without intellect, if they are mindless? And that's where we are. So let's jump into the text. I hope you have your coffee. And you have some milk to go in the coffee. Maybe even some cheese and some nuts. Coffee beans. And you're ready to jump in and join me. Let's go.